you got to be involved with your kids from the day, no matter if you're homeschooling, if you send them to a private school, if you send them to a public school, you have to be involved. The other thing that I love about Frederick Douglass, he's self-taught, and I think it was self-taught through reading, something that we espouse so much in the Madison Republicans, where, Jeff, you've got the whole stack of books behind you. I've got this library behind me. Like, reading is incredibly important. And the fact that what you read can help guide you, the fact that books are a means to teach you, has got me thinking a lot. And I don't know if you know this, but Loudoun County is in the middle of this superintendent search. We're trying to find someone, going through the interviews and process and stuff. I think we'll get someone out of this. But I've been thinking about, like, going through the process, thinking about AI and all the technology and stuff. Like, what's the goal of education, Jeff? Like, what would you say is the goal of teaching a child? Is it to create a PowerPoint that they can then present on a flat screen TV that someone else wrote the content for, that they're just copying off Wikipedia? Or is it to really have ideas that they can try to communicate and sell someone, regardless of the medium? If that's a podcast, if that's a PowerPoint presentation, like, what would you say the purpose of education is?
Well, I think you divide it up between different age groups. So if you put the elementary age group together, I would say the purpose of education is lay the foundation for communication. They need time to discover themselves as far as like play and outside and socialization. They need time to read. They need to be read to, and they need to be listened to while they're reading. I think this is something the education system neglects, is each child needs the opportunity to read out loud regularly. I would say maybe an hour per day, or 30 minutes, depending on the age, and then it would grow as they go through school. And then basic arithmetic, deeper math like algebra and geometry can be learned, but it can be learned easier if you have a basic foundation in arithmetic, subtraction and division. And a lot of times we spend time in elementary school focusing on fractions and decimals and all these things when the kids haven't actually learned the basics of arithmetic. So making sure that you pare down that, and basically you build a foundation for education in the elementary level. Once you get to the middle school level, my recommendation is now you open up to a different, more critical thinking. So I think you allow the kids to study, or you teach the kids philosophy, theology. I know that there's a separation of church and state in our country, but I don't think that it should be that way. I think the education system should be open to all different ideas and ideas. And so you teach this is where you get a baseline for morals and thinking, the ability to, think through an idea as opposed to just speak at the idea. You open up some science and some history, lay the foundation for knowledge for the child. Basically, during this time period, is you want to teach them the ability to both critically think and search and find their information. So basic technology classes like Google researches, even potentially training on AI as we grow into the future will be important. So students understand the technology they're going to be working with when you get to that next level, which would be high school. Now, at the high school level, if you have a proper foundation and you learn how to critically think and search for information, now you can kind of study, whatever you need. The first 2 years of high school should be foundational for civic information and, community understanding. Whatever the jobs are in that community, you should be centralized learning that. And then understanding civics, like how to make a difference in your community, how the government works, how, representation works, the republic works, our founding, the basic of American history and world history. After that, in your junior and senior year, I'm thinking you kind of let the students dive into wherever they want to go. Kind of a plan for either small business training, higher education planning, whatever it is that the student seems to be interested in. They can kind of start to be guided at that point. So just off the top of my head, that's my education plan. What do you think?
No, I think there's a lot to that. And I would agree that, like, if you don't have a strong foundation in addition and subtraction and multiplication, like, you're gonna struggle in algebra, because algebra is just sort of adding another layer on top of that. But if you can't already do the quick algebra, the quick multiplication, the quick division in your mind, it just makes it that much difficult when you start adding these like symbols of X's and Y's and Z's, and you kind of get lost because you're already thinking like, okay, I got to do this addition, but then I've also got these other variables that I got to keep track of. It just becomes more complicated. I agree. Like if we slow down elementary school, and if we said like we're gonna really, when you graduate from second grade and third grade, you're going to have your multiplications and your division down flat, and you'll be able to do it without thinking about it. Then you can keep layering on top of that, and then you can start adding simple geometric concepts. And by the time you're in middle school, I think you could have advanced algebra, at least beginning. By the time you're out of algebra, I think you out of middle school, you could have advanced, probably algebra 1, algebra 2. And I remember seeing some like Harvard introductory test from, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago or something. And the kids had to know advanced Latin, which may or may not have its merits now. I think learning a foreign language helps you learn English better.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds, like by breaking down your language to translate it to another language, you actually become better at your own language. Like that's what I found learning
Yeah.
Spanish, learning Latin.
Well, that's how.
And then I think,
so that's how our founders like John Quincy Adams, that's how they were trained. Like they were trained to translate different languages in order to better understand theirs. So yeah, good point.
no, and then I think just like having a real strong foundation in the fundamentals of mathematics, even if you never, like I think a lot of kids struggle with mathematics in high school because you didn't have a good foundation in middle school. And then you spend your time thinking, instead of thinking like, maybe I could just kind of like suffer through this geometry, suffer through this pre-calculus, instead you're thinking like, why the heck do I need to know this? Because you had a bound foundation in middle school. And I think if we really focus on the fundamentals at the fundamental ages, I think that would be key. So I like what you're thinking. I think there's you could ask more for your students as high schoolers. Like the programming classes I teach, like one of them is a Java class, and then the other one is kind of an open-ended programming problem. And I think it's it's a safe environment for children because they don't know what they want to do, but they know they kind of like programming. So they just sort of pick something and then they struggle through it. Either they learn a lot more than they thought it was. Like some kids are like, oh, I'm just going to build a game. And then they realize all the work that goes into building a game, because it's not just like programming commands. There's a whole fact that we have to do like art direction, assets, there's physics engines, and a lot of tools will do that for you, but it's a lot more complicated than just saying like, well, we're going to build like a game where you can walk around and shoot people,
Yeah.
or cut fruit like in Fruit Ninja and stuff.
I don't think we want kids in the schools creating games where they can walk around and shoot each other. I don't think that's a good it's like shaping behavior, right? Like there's got to be boundaries and morals everywhere, and it's just got to be like basic rules to be like, hey, you want to create video games here, let's make them happy.
That's true. No, I agree with that, but unfortunately that's all the
That's
games
where
they
the
play
kid
at home.
but unfortunately
but
you're right, that's where the kids' mindsets are. I mean, I mentioned before, I went to a writing workshop for kids in the schools, middle school age, and this is what the kids are writing about, right? Like we should be concerned that children want to write about this stuff or want to make video games about this stuff. That is, that's the deeper, issue that we face as a society.
Yeah. No, I agree. So